Alright, last week we started with basic, the framework, just to give you a good example, more or less, what it is entitled internal auditing, the whole purpose internal auditing, process, test of control. Why start with all the standards before we get to process and controls? Basically, you got a good background again to fulfill the thing. II standard, international professional framework, internal auditing is conducted in a diverse legal and culture environment. Like we know, every business are different. So it's quite different each environment you're going into to audit. Like I explained last time, if you're in a banking sector, you will be specialized in that sort of center or environment to work in. You will know all the banking laws, what should have been applicable to that situation. So you will eventually become more specialist in a thing. If they suddenly change you to a manufacturing environment, you will be actually out of your depth. Or just for more or less 3 or 4 months. So you can figure out what's working on those whole process. If the standards are used in conjunction with standards issued by other authority bodies, we will build it out. Internal auditing is still in developing phases. If they can get something out of the CA stream, we use it. So if you said if the external auditors want this and that and this and that, how can we use those sort of information that they need to develop our own profession? But always remember, internal auditor are related to the company. We actually are the strong arm for a company to develop their own systems. We want to make sure that nothing gets lost. Like I explained last time, internal auditing is actually looking for the small defects in the system to fix it. Not so much in how big the problem is or how much money, but every small fraud can erupt to something bigger. Even a volcano starts small. But a big eruption, it still needs a small crack to get to the outside. So we believe the same thing in internal auditing, that we rather prevent the small things to happen, so nothing serious and big can be. We are a strong arm for management, so we assist management to have a better understanding of what's going on in the business. The purpose of standard is to basic principles that represent the best practice. How can you do it? We want to know. What is the norm? We know if you want to go for a driver's license, you have to pass the first test. Learn all the detailed signs and how far you should be behind and how many seconds and how you count seconds. Now, the purpose of standards is to give us that basic principles. How are we going to practice this thing? Why I want to so sure that you know the standards going through before we get to the bigger and serious, more control processes, that you understand where we come from. So you can 100% make sure what's the purpose behind what you're going to do further on. So establish the basis for evaluation of the internal audit performance. Anything related down there, we should check it. How do you know you passed this module? You're going to write an exam. How do you know you passed the exam? Normally when you walk out, you'll say, I'm creamed. So frequently, you ask them outside, how's it going? Sir, I've creamed this one. 90. Well, it's always a lie in auditing because it's also a sort of perception subject, how much you can motivate what you're doing. You actually tell me what you know and how it's been implemented during your questionnaire and answer sheet. It's not just the facts that counts, it's your opinion about what you've done that counts a lot in auditing. Actually, it counts more than the facts. For us to improve organization, process and operations, look down there, improvement, we want it better. We don't change things just for the change of sake of change, because don't fix things that's working properly. Because if you start changing, the bright spark coming up down there, and you said to the people, you know, I've won the route from UNISA, and I've got now this big degree. And I'm actually the hot shot. You guys have to listen. And meanwhile, there's a person who got 30, 40 years experience in a specific environment. He knows all the details. If it's an accounting system, if it's a stock taking you're going to do an audit, or it's going to be a business process, all those sort of things, those guys work daily with it. They know the problem areas. We think we got a theoretical base, and we're going to sort it out. Always a little bit bragging, because you're in an authority position because you're checking. Just remember, you're not an expert in doing it. You're the expert to tell them what they're doing wrong, or possibly wrong. Remember, always compliment guys also if they're doing their work well, and never accuse. Remember last time I said we never accuse a guy. We rather put it in a nice way, so the guy actually has to go to hell, because you make it very exciting to go to hell. Actually, if you can produce down there, you actually foresee that, it would be nice to go straight to hell portion down there. But when we actually tell a guy, we're looking at his work, the standards are principles focused, majority requirements, consisting of statement of basic requirements for professional practice of internal auditing. We're evaluating the effectiveness of performance. Effectiveness of performance. All business processes do have manuals, I believe so. Maybe a young company that started won't have those sort of detail, but as they prolong through business and the guy employ more people, you want to put something in place in writing. That's also where the internal auditors as consulting put certain procedures into place. How do you do a data circulation? So we'll tell a guy, this is the steps. It's not brain surgeons down there, but you've got processes that have to take place. How do you do payments for stuff that you go, you swipe the guy's credit card. Companies don't use credit cards, actually maybe just for expense accounts, but it should be an approval rate of a certain amount for certain levels of people. This guy can approve maybe purchases for 5,000 Rand, that guy 10. Big assets will go longer, all the way higher up in the hierarchy of your people. The structure of the standards, now we're getting to business. The structure of standards is divided between attribute and performance standards. Attribute standards address the attributes of the organization and the individuals performing internal auditing. The performance standards describe the nature of internal auditing and provide quality criteria against which the performance of these services can be measured. Very important, those two things that you have to understand. Attribute, how. Performance, how well. So the performance standards describe the nature of the internal auditing and provides quality criteria against which the performance of these services can be measured. Attribute and performance standards are also provided to apply to all internal audit activities. Implementation standards are also provided to expand. This implementation standards is new things that the auditors think there's a need. Remember, there's in the world there's quite a few internal auditors and internal audit firms these days. It seems like they're still moving to be contracted as you CA firms knocking into this huge quality of money and quantity of services. That's why these days you get an internal audit department, even in an external audit firm, and these guys specialize in business processes. Assurance services involve the auditor's objective assessment of the evidence to provide the independent opinion or conclusion. Assurance, guarantee. Is it working? Yes, I know it's working. To provide the independent, remember your definition of internal auditing? Just go back to that. Independent opinion or conclusion regarding an entity's operations, functions, processes, systems, and other subject matters. If you look at those things, they're not specified accounting systems. That fall under systems, but look down at difference. Operational. If it's a production company, you will be maybe required to watch the production process to make your opinion if there's not losses. You can look at human resource systems and to see if people are taking leave as they should be. Is the wastage of time, spending the people too much time on the internet, are they using Facebook, and all those funny things. If you use Facebook in a working environment, is it stealing from the company? You're stealing time. Most frequently, because when you go on Facebook, how many minutes do you spend there? How many hours? Hours, yeah. So it's production time lost. So that's a risk for a company. But these days, even companies can use Facebook to promote their products. So even that's a new environment that's been opened up that we as internal auditors have to check is your electronic media. How can the company actually use these sort of facilities to create a better environment? Your staff, I've seen so frequently these days because I'm interested in this field of electronic marketing. And I see there's so many companies that their staff, they've got maybe 100 to 200 workers that's on Facebook. And they promote the products of the company. And even a company's external environment has been penetrated by how they perceived in the marketplace by their Facebook page. And I think the most frequently been used of misuse of your Facebook pages is your social responsibility. You want to show this thing, oh, we're doing this so nice. We made a garden for a school, so we feeding scheme. But most of these people go like Mandela Day. People flocking out to paint one room. How much about 140 rooms in a school? Or we give you seedlings for your garden, and when we left, the sun can burn them. No problem down there. So, there are general three parties involved in assurance and services. The person or group directly involved with the entity, operations, functions, process systems, or other matters. The process owner. If I'm the debtors manager and I get my approval, then I'm this guy, the process owner. The person or group making the assessment, which is normally your internal auditor, the service provider. I want you to come, you provide. And the person or group using the assessment, who's going to use this information? Normally management, or more senior management. I'm the debtors manager. I want to know if my system is effective. Get internal auditors so I can prove to my board of directors that I need more staff members maybe, or I need a better computer system, or we want a better internet system to send our invoices, or we're going to make use of an external provider of those internet services of statements. I'm currently consulting for the Liberty Group, or a company that's consulting for Liberty Group, and they use the internet to send their statements out. Your cell phone account, you see trips by email. Those sort of things 30 years ago, when I was as young as you were, then there was still postage. We did have bulk postages. So you take bulk statements to the post office, which will go then to a bulk distribution post, like Wits did have a huge one. But these days, postal offices in the marketplace, they're in dire straits. Nobody wants to post letters anymore. No more love letters, nothing. By email. If you see even now by SMS, you can even send your boyfriend a nice letter to go to another place. And even Springbok coaches and coaches get fired by email, which is actually a terrible disaster. We lost the interpersonal relation between people. You see frequently in restaurants, people sit each one with their own huge. I still wonder how young people actually start knowing each other. You say social media, But do you have any personal conversation with each other? Or, let me rather SMS you quickly, or what's up, or what's wrong, or still, once in a blue moon. Do they phone each other, talk, find out how's your day? Yeah, people just message, how was your day? Oh, terrible. You lost the personal feeling and expression of people through social media. You can't see, somebody say, I'm so furious by SMS. Did you use difference by SMS? Or you use all those dots and stars and those sort of things to go expression. Or I see these days with my kids, you can even send an angry face.
You can even, like a
Yeah, angry face and things. But if the person was in front of you close enough, I understand distance and the speed that we're traveling, but you see how much there's also for the internal audit a quite huge environment to go into those sort of media, because we're moving away from strict accounting, strict business processes. E-commerce are so huge, bid or buy. You look at OLX or something like that, and you look at Gumtree. 10 years ago there wasn't a Gumtree. Auction houses, motor vehicles, those things are all on the internet. Now, for us in internal auditing, there's a huge marketplace. How do we secure business? How do we actually control business through those things? How are we going to get our money back? See, this is processes we can advise the client, but we can only advise the client if we are specialists in those fields. So we have to study and keep on studying. Consulting services are advisory. Remember, we're going backwards down there. We first said there are three parties involved: assurance services, performance standards, and attribute standards. Then we look at internal audit services. There we got applicable to assurance or consulting activities. Those sort of things down there. So we go down there again. Consulting services, when we provide something to the client that's not in a normal business practice. But this is, you'll see later on in appointments that this sort of services has to be very specifically written down in writing, so there's no influence between the parties. Or, did I ask you to do this for me? Very careful in consulting services. When performing consulting services, the internal should maintain objectivity and not assuming management responsibilities. If you ask me to develop for you a new data system, as the internal auditor, that's a huge thing for me. So I developed the system, and now I take your whole function over. And I say, next year we down there. I say, oh, that data system that I developed for you guys are brilliant. Let's audit it. Can you audit it? I don't think so, because you were involved in developing and make recommendations to that system to management. So you won't be objective. If there's a flaw in your system, will you tell them? They paid you a fortune to do that consulting. So hell, I think your system is outdated. We can change this quickly. On the computer, new thing. So be carefully on advisory services, so we don't take the responsibility of management away. So there's still management run the business. We're the strong arm. They come and tell us, did this happen? And we go and check. Or can you look at this process are very effective? Then we go and check for them and give them advice. We not enforce our own advice on them, but it should also be, remember, we report up to the board of directors eventually. So if they're not taking our advice, there should be a very good reason for it. And then this is the big guy. Chief audit executives are accountable for overall conformation with the standards. We have to apply to the standards. We are a profession. And a profession have ethic rules and things that you have to abide, otherwise they kick you out. If you're part of a hockey team and you don't perform, they kick you out. So even in the audit profession, if you don't comply to rules and regulations with your registration, they will cancel it. Review and development of standards. How do we get to these things? How do we get to a standard? What's the process? Now, the International Audit Standard Board engaged extensive consulting and discussed prior to issuing standards. If there's a problem in a specific field, there's, for instance, 20,000 internal auditors in South Africa, and then we send this. How do you verify eBay transactions? Now, all these guys sitting down there, all the clever ones, not like the normal ones, the clever ones that's got lots and lots of degrees and lots and lots of experience, and they computer fundies and all. Then they're going to sit and say, oh, I want to see this to be down there, and I want to see that to be down there. And they will make a recommendation to your standards board. Those sort of recommendations is put into a preliminary standard, then is put out to all internal auditors and public. Anybody that wants to read those can read and comment on it. And after that, then it's been drafted and put on the website, so that then it becomes a standard eventually. All these things go through. First, we ask experts in that field to give us an opinion what should be done. What want we to see as a profession. Then secondly, we issue that standard out for worldwide, so this on, and for public comment. So we send it to all our members. Do you agree with this guy's opinion or the board's opinion on this? Then the guys make recommendations. We actually shave it and sand it down to something workable or more acceptable to everybody. Then it goes back maybe sometimes, and then we put a draft out. All exposure drafts are posted on this institute's website. That portion down there, you can actually just type that in and you will get to the website of the Institute of Internal Auditors of South Africa. Right, attribute standards. Remember, 100. 1,000. I'm not sure if you have to remember all the numbering. I don't think so. Purpose, authority, and responsibility. The purpose, authority, and responsibility of internal audit activity must be formally defined in the internal audit charter. I will do the internal audit charter just before we start really going into the controls. That you can see how a charter has been composed and how does it look like. So when you're in the workplace, you know exactly what you're. This is your letter consisting of definition of the internal auditing, the code of ethics, the standards. I've got a very nice one of Rustenburg Municipality, the charter down there. The Chief Audit Executive must periodically review the internal audit charter and present it to the senior management and the board for approval. This charter are listed for your client. This is what I'm going to do for you. This is how I'm going to, that's my ethic rules for this specific business. So you will each, that's not a generalization, but it is specific. Interpretation, internal charter is formal document that defines the internal audit activity purpose, authority, internal audit charter, establish the internal audit activity's position within the organization, including the nature of the chief audit executive's function, reporting relationship with the board, who are we going to report to, what's the steps that we're going through down there, and physical priority related to performance of engagement, and defines the scope of the internal audit activity, what we're going to do. A, the nature of the assurance services provided to the organization must be defined in the internal audit charter. If assurance are to be provided to parties outside the organization, maybe creditors, we can specify that. Who's going to use it? The nature of consulting, down there, the nature of the services, consulting service. You will find normally this one means consulting. That one, A, assurance. C is altijd, every time it's a consulting activity down there. Independence, objectivity. I just want to go down there. We have the independence is the freedom from conditions that threaten the ability of the internal audit activity to carry out internal responsibilities in an unbiased manner. I think I'm mixing up the two groups, because I did have in a charter, when we do the charter, I didn't do the charter last week, I just run through things. I'm mixing two of the lectures. There I take for you independence, down to the charters and things down. What the word actually means. To achieve the degree of independence necessary to effectively carry out the responsibility. Presume independence, presume bias, objectivity, so unbiased mental attitude. That no qualified composer, not quality compromises are made. Gee, lacking of British today. Objectivity requires the internal audit to do. We have to use sound judgment to make our opinion up on things and presenting to us. We shouldn't be unduly influenced by anybody else. Organization independence. Remember, look down at what I put here. Organization independence is effective achievement of the chief audit executive reports functioning to the board. How he's working to the board. Example of function reporting to the board involve approved internal audit charter, risk-based internal audit plan. What are we going to audit this year? Approved internal audit budget and resources. This is all senior management. And also, look down, they also have to approve our money. Hopefully always $1.5 million, but we'll settle for $1 million. The internal, look at A down there, the internal audit activity must be free from interference. So, in anything we have to be free. We have to have free to access. We have to have freedom of how we got to work. Stop this thing. The scope of the internal, we can determine the scope of the internal, free from interference and determine the scope. We must decide what we want to do based on a risk profile of a specific function in that business environment we want to audit. Even though management tell us on special assignments or consulting services what they want from us, we have to decide on risk-based what we're going to do. Cash, always. Fixed assets, sometimes. Really big fixed assets, maybe once. In audit textbooks, they mention that you see these big wheels on the mines that pull the cables on the towers down there. Those things is approximately 10 to 15 million rand. It takes approximately 6 months to get it in South Africa. The one mine that have one as a precaution on the grass was growing through this thing, and the guys wants to audit this thing because it's, for instance, call it now 10 million or $1 million those days. And I asked them, where's this $1 million rand asset? The guys, I don't know, it's lying down there. So where? So no, in stock here. So but 10 million rand you let it inside. I said, where the hell do you think we're going to put this big thing? It's a big wheel. So now why do you purchase this thing? They never used it in 10 years. So well, if it broke down, it means we can't mine. And it takes approximately 6 months to get one of these things being made, and then 6 months because they have to come by ship to South Africa. It's not something you can put into a plane and bring down here. So we have to look at the scope we can decide, performing the work and communication, who are we going to communicate to. The guy can't say, you can only report to me. Don't tell my boss. Please, I don't want these things get out of my department. Then already there's a scope limitation, or your reporting chain can be broken. If a guy wants to hide something, why do they bring you in? Just rather leave you outside. Lock the gate. Individual objectivity, internal must have a partly unbiased attitude and avoid any conflict of interest. Interpretation is a situation which internal, like I said, well, if I mentioned it before, if somebody invites me to go to Durban to watch the lions demolish the sharks. So on a Friday I'm busy with the order down there, and CEO come to me and say, Hans, flying down tonight, Durban, everything has been booked, you're coming with. Should I then take the consideration circumstances and ask him who's going with? Yes, I should, because I don't want it to impair or be looking impairment of my judgment. Say, no, it's a company thing. We got about 14 guys going down. One guy cancelled, and we decide we're going to invite you to know you better. Then it's not a special privilege to me, even though I'm a freak for rugby. It's not a special privilege. I will appreciate it, but it could be impair my judgment anytime down there. And we should be very careful what we're taking into consideration as a gift. If it's solely for me, then I won't take it, because then there should be a reason behind that. Why do I get special privileges? If I give whiskey for all males that working for a company, I give you one, take it. Or they said, listen, all the girls are inviting to some girls come and singing down there. It's a hen party. You can go. Because it's not like, we'll have a private bride tonight. Maybe if he's unmarried and you're unmarried, it could be a nice thing. Maybe, I don't know. He's a handsome chap and he's earning a lot of money, who knows. But please, be unbiased. Payment to independence. What shall we do if it happens? First thing, normally, if you think it's going to happen, impair judgments, you already did. If you just think, this gift, maybe I will be biased. I won't be unbiased. Then it already did impair your judgment. But normally we can report it to a senior. If you're in a position that is a senior guy, discuss it with him. Say, no, that's all right. You can still go on with it. Or we have to report it to management, say there's a conflict of interest, and we want to resolve that conflict of interest. So majorly down there, look at the whole definition down there on your slides. And then we have to mention to management, senior management, and the board, what's the nature of this impairment? Why do we see it's an impairment of our judgment? Independence or objectivity. Previously, look down there. That's what we have a discussion earlier. Previously responsible. You can't audit something that you have done before. You can't audit your own work. It's right, writing your exam paper, then go back to your textbook, come back and rewrite it with an open book. So be impairments, you can't previous responsibility. Assurance engagements for functions over which the chief auditor exerts their responsibility must be overseen by a party outside the internal audit activity. If our boss designs a system, how are you as a junior auditor going to criticize him? It will be totally impossible, actually. Will you think you will break through? No, this guy said, I designed this. What the devil do you know about this? Oh, sir, but you made an error down there. No, I didn't. Who are you going to tell? It's like we tried to tell the president he shouldn't fire a minister of finance, and he did it. Changed him overnight. It cost about 5 rand to the dollar. Who's paying the price? The taxpayer. Everybody in this country paying the price. Every single body, even if you don't think so, foodstuff getting more expensive to import, and the government's actually benefit out of the deal, because the pricing go up on products, they get more VAT. But also the spending power of people go down, because they can't afford to buy so much anymore. Insurance engagements for functions. When we do consulting services, we shouldn't accept on that consulting services to do the internal audit function. Because definitely we will be biased against ourselves. Physician due professional care. Must possess the knowledge, skills, and other competencies need to perform individual responsibilities. Like I said, if you specialize in banking environments or financial services, it will be difficult for you suddenly to make a change to environment like production or a farming operation or something like that. Because you don't have in-depth knowledge to know what can go wrong. You can learn it, but look at knowledge, skills, and other competencies needed to perform. It also means we always have to study and stay ahead of our field. If you want to do eBays and those sort of things, you should be a clued up computer fanatic. You should eat, dream, and sleep computers. Do you think hackers will be good internal auditors of all computer systems? Yes, because they went into that system and they study every single detail to see how can they actually break into that system. So ex-hacker would be a terrific guy, but you have to control him very carefully, because maybe he will tell you rip your whole system off. But they would be brilliant computer consultants. But I believe the average age of hackers into systems is about 14 to 16. Not really old grey people like me. We don't hack into computer systems, we switch them off. Due professional care, obtain competent advice. Right, there's a proficiency and due professional care. If I don't have the knowledge as an internal auditor, or my team don't have a specific need. For instance, there's a complicated import-export contract. We don't have a contract specialist in our group, because they're quite expensive, those guys. So we can go to attorney for a company and we can employ a contract specialist for that assignment. Or like myself, specializing in taxation, internal audit team can contract me for that specific need to look at the tax structuring of a specific deal. So that's what this one means. Obtain competent advice. If you got lack, you don't have 6 months to train somebody or send him on a course to learn the ins and outs of a specific thing. So you then consult somebody to take him. The internal auditors must have sufficient knowledge to evaluate, but to evaluate the risk of fraud. We're not fraud specialists. So we have to find the red flags to give us indication that something went wrong. We should have a better knowledge than the average guy, but we should not be a specialist. That's not our job to detect fraud. It's to get indicators of fraud, and then after that, we will then get a specialist guy in to determine the fraud, or we will go and get a forensic auditor in to establish the amount or extent of the fraud. We have sufficient knowledge, technology-based audit techniques, computer. See, we're moving to computers. We should at least know how to use certain computer programs. If you don't know how to use Word or Excel, how can you prepare reports? And if you want to audit a SAP system and you don't know how SAP system working, how will you audit it? How will you know something is wrong if you don't have that expertise? We're getting down there. Due professional care, it must apply care and skills expected of a reasonable, prudent and competent internal auditor. What is the norm? I can't take a first year student and give him a complicated tax situation to handle. You maybe have tax 1, you should need a master's degree in the tax field to make an opinion. Now we're going to present that uninformed opinion to management to make business decisions on. That's the risk. and then afterwards we all get fired, and we all stand in a queue at unemployment, because you only can get unemployment if you get fired. Due professional care must be alert to significant risks that might affect objective operations or resources. Continuous professional development, study, 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 study. That's why all professions have accreditation, which is if you do this course, you get so many points. In a year in your professional training, you must accumulate so many points to stay a member of this association. Requirements for quality assurance improvement plan, internal assessment. There's two different assessments. We can check it internally, or we can have somebody from the outside come and evaluate our internal audit function. There's quite a lot of data inside. I'll just show you the highlights. When you get the slides from me, you can go through them and highlight your own. Don't just stick to my red ones. This is for me to talk nonsense to you. The main indication. Reporting on the quality assurance improvement program. Please, senior management, remember, always try to report to the highest level you can reach with that report. If the accountants ask you in a company with for 3 or 4 divisions, and each division got its own accountant, they ask you to evaluate the accounting system, you won't report to them, you will report to the financial manager. Or better, to the financial director about a problem the accountants have. Because they report to this guy. This guy already knows about a problem. Or they want to motivate to this guy why they need certain more things to go on. Right, let's take a 5-minute break down there, and then we can go on after that.